Rome is a powder keg, and the most powerful man on earth just walked in with a lit torch. It's 37 AD. The Emperor Caligula is standing in the middle of the Roman Senate, and the air is so thick you can't breathe. These are the most powerful men in the world. War heroes, lawyers, aristocrats, and they are terrified of a 24-year-old kid. Caligula isn't just looking for respect. He's looking for a reason to eliminate his rivals. He stares at a senator's wife, pulls her into a private room, and then comes back to the dinner table to humiliate her in front of the entire room, including her husband. No one says a word. No one fights back. They just look at their plates. This is the moment Rome realizes the golden boy is gone. In his place is a man who realized he could do literally anything, and the world would just watch. He treats the treasury like a personal piggy bank. He doesn't want to be a leader. He wants to be a nightmare. Before the chaos and the madness, Rome actually loved this guy. They called him the Star. His real name was Gaius, but everyone knew him as Caligula, which means little boots. He grew up in muddy army camps, wearing a tiny, custom-made soldier's uniform to entertain his father's legions. The soldiers adored him. He was the mascot of the Roman Empire. But that childhood ended in a horror movie. His father, the legendary General Germanicus, passed away under suspicious circumstances. His mother and brothers were dealt with by the paranoid Emperor Tiberius. Caligula was the only one left, forced to live on a private island with the very man who destroyed his family. He spent years watching Tiberius mistreat people for sport, learning how to hide his rage behind a blank stare. By the time Tiberius was gone, the kid wasn't just ready to lead, he was ready to break everything. The first 6 months were a dream. He lowered taxes, he threw massive parties, he brought back the people Tiberius had exiled. Rome was obsessed with him. Then he got sick. For weeks, the entire empire prayed for his recovery. People slept in the streets outside the palace, waiting for news. When he finally walked out of his bedroom, the man they loved was gone. Something in his brain snapped. Some say it was the fever, others say it was the dormant trauma of his family finally bubbling over. He started talking to himself. He stopped sleeping. He began wandering the palace halls at night, shouting at the moon. He didn't just want to be an emperor anymore. He decided he was a living god. He ordered the heads of famous statues of gods like Jupiter and Apollo to be removed and replaced with his own likeness. He would go to the temple of Castor and Pollux, stand between the statues of the twin gods, and force citizens to worship him. He began having private conversations with the moon, inviting her to his bed. He told his inner circle that he had been talking to Jupiter, and the god was actually getting on his nerves. The Roman economy was the next victim. Caligula inherited a massive surplus, billions in today's money. He spent it all in less than a year. He didn't spend it on roads or bridges. He spent it on his own ego. He built a 2-mile-long floating bridge across the Bay of Baiae just so he could ride his horse across the water. Why? Because a psychic once told him he had as much chance of becoming emperor as he did of riding a horse across the bay. He wasted the life savings of the empire just to prove a dead guy wrong. The Senate thought they could control him. They were wrong. Caligula hated the old guard. He took every opportunity to remind them that they were nothing. He would invite the highest-ranking senators to dinner and then force them to run for miles alongside his chariot while he laughed. He took their wealth. He took their pride. Then he took his horse, Incitatus. He gave this horse a marble stall, an ivory manger, and a collar made of jewels. He gave the horse its own house and a team of staff to cook for it. Finally, he announced he was making the horse a consul, the highest political office in the Roman Republic. He wasn't doing it because he liked the horse. He was doing it to tell the Senate that a farm animal could do their job better than they could. He was stripping away their dignity, one insult at a time. When the money ran out, Caligula turned the palace into a place of exploitation. He forced the daughters and wives of the nobility to work there, and then charged the public to enter. He began accusing wealthy citizens of crimes just so he could seize their estates. He was running a protection racket on the entire city. He grew bored with Rome and decided he needed a military victory to rival his father's. He marched the most elite fighting force on the planet toward the English Channel to conquer Britain. The legions stood on the beach, ready to board the ships. Suddenly, Caligula signaled a halt. He didn't order an invasion. He ordered his soldiers to go down to the sand and collect seashells. He told them these were spoils of the sea and that they had just defeated the god Neptune. He made the greatest army in history fill their helmets with shells and march back to Rome for a victory parade. This wasn't just eccentric behavior. It was a calculated psychological war against his own people. He wanted everyone to know that their lives and their sanity were subject to his whims. He built 2 massive ships on Lake Nemi that were basically floating palaces. They had heated floors, plumbing, and gardens. They were covered in gold and silk. He used them for massive, decadent parties while the people in the city were starting to starve. He began appearing in public dressed as the goddess Venus or the hero Hercules. He would walk through the streets in silk robes, demanding that people kiss his hand or feet. If you looked him in the eye, you could be targeted. If you mentioned a goat in his presence because he was unusually hairy, you were in trouble. He lived in a state of constant, vibrating paranoia, and he took it out on everyone around him. The tension finally hit a breaking point with the Praetorian Guard. These were his personal bodyguards, the elite of the elite. Their leader was a man named Cassius Chaerea. He was a war hero, but he had a high-pitched voice. Caligula spent every single day mocking him in front of the other guards. Whenever it was Chaerea's turn to get the daily password, Caligula would give him something insulting or mocking. Caligula didn't realize that you can only push a man so far before he stops caring about his own safety. Chaerea started a conspiracy. He didn't want to save the Republic. He just wanted Caligula to stop talking. In January of 41 AD, during a series of games and plays, the conspirators cornered the emperor in a narrow underground hallway. Chaerea was the first to strike. The rest of the guards rushed in, ending his reign for good. They didn't just want him gone, they wanted to erase him. They went into the palace and removed his remaining family members to ensure the bloodline was finished forever. When the news hit the streets, the people didn't believe it at first. They thought it was another one of Caligula's sick jokes, a trap to see who would celebrate so he could arrest them later. But when the Praetorian Guard began hunting down his supporters, the reality set in. The nightmare was over. Rome didn't go back to being a republic. They just found the next guy in line, Caligula's uncle Claudius, who was found hiding behind a curtain in the palace, shaking with fear. The empire survived, but the damage was done. Caligula had proved that the Roman system had a fatal flaw. If the man at the top was a monster, the whole world had to suffer with him. He took the most powerful empire in history and turned it into a circus of chaos and shells, all because no one had the courage to say no until it was too late. The Senate didn't just hate Caligula, they were paralyzed by him. He would force them to watch as he punished the guilty in the arena, often in ways that were designed to maximize terror. He once decided that the cost of cattle was too high to feed his gladiatorial lions, so he ordered his guards to simply grab people from the crowd and throw them into the pit instead. He lived for the moment of absolute crushing realization in a victim's eyes. The moment they understood that laws, status, and logic no longer existed. He spent his final days obsessing over his own immortality. He began constructing a bridge from his palace straight to the Temple of Jupiter, claiming he needed a shortcut to discuss the weather with his fellow gods. He would walk into the streets of Rome at night, disguised as a commoner, just to listen to people whisper about his cruelty, then reveal himself and watch their faces turn white as he ordered their arrest. He wasn't just a king, he was a black hole of narcissism that swallowed the Roman treasury, its dignity, and its sanity. When the end finally came in that dark tunnel, the assassins weren't just ending a man, they were trying to stop the idea that one person could ever be allowed to hold that much power again. But the scar he left on the Roman psyche never truly healed. He had shown them that the throne didn't just attract the best of Rome, it could be seized by its worst. His cruelty wasn't just physical, it was a game of mental exhaustion. Caligula would host elaborate banquets where he would sit in total silence for hours, staring intensely at his guests until they began to tremble. Suddenly, he would burst into a bone-chilling laugh. When a terrified senator asked what was so funny, Caligula replied that he had just realized he could have every person in the room executed with a single nod of his head. He didn't want your loyalty, he wanted to own your heartbeat. He turned the halls of power into a hall of mirrors where no one knew if they were a guest or the next sacrifice. By the end, the air in the palace didn't just smell like incense and expensive wine. It smelled like the cold, sharp sweat of men who knew they were living on borrowed time. Rome wasn't being governed. It was being held hostage by a man who treated the world's greatest empire like a bored child treats an anthill.